Good morning, girls. In the last few classes, we were discussing about some of the ancient civilizations. We learnt about the River Valley civilization and the Mesopotamian civilization. Today, we'll begin with the third chapter, the Egyptian civilization. Egypt, the gift of Nile. The Egyptian civilization emerged in the valley of the river Nile and flourished for more than 2000 years. So like every other civilization, the Egyptian civilization also developed at the bank of a river. Emerge means to rise or to develop. So it emerged in the valley of river Nile and it flourished for more than 2000 years. Flourish means to be prosperous. So the Egyptian civilization, it was a prosperous civilization and it lasted for more than 2000 years. The river Nile has proved to be such a great boon for Egypt that the great historian Herodotus called Egypt the gift of Nile. So this river Nile, it is considered as a great boon. Boon means blessing. So it is considered as a great blessing and hence Herodotus, he referred to Egypt as a gift of Nile. Now you'll see why it is known as a gift of Nile. If the river Nile would not have been there, Egypt would have been a part of the vast Sahara desert. So if river Nile was not there, Egypt would still have been part of the Sahara desert. This is because most of Egypt is desert. So the river Nile, during floods, when it used to overflow, it used to deposit silt along the river banks. So this silt, it made the region there, it made the region along the river banks fertile and hence the people, they could cultivate crops there. So when most of Egypt was desert, only the region along the banks of river Nile remained fertile because of the silt which was deposited by the river Nile. And hence this is the reason why river Nile, Egypt is known as a gift of Nile, because if river Nile was not there, Egypt would still have been a desert. Historians have divided the history of Egypt into three phases. So the history of Egypt, it is divided into three phases. Phases means parts or periods. So the history of Egypt is divided into three periods or three parts. The first is the Old Kingdom. It lasted from 3000 to 2000 BCE. Memphis, situated near modern Cairo, was the capital of the empire. So the first period, which is the Old Kingdom period, it lasted from 3000 to 2000 BCE, and Memphis, which is situated near the modern Cairo. Cairo is the present capital of Egypt. So this Memphis, which was situated near the Cairo, this was the capital. Memphis was the capital of the ancient Egypt. During this period, many pyramids were constructed. So during this, the Old Kingdom period, many pyramids were constructed. Now, pyramids, they are triangle-shaped structures. They have the outer surface in the shape of a triangle, and they were used to bury the kings and their wives, the pharaohs and their wives. Now, you can see on page 26, you can see here on page 26, this is a pyramid. They are in the shape of a triangle and inside they had this burial chambers where the kings, where the pharaohs and their wives were buried. So many pyramids were constructed during the Old Kingdom period and hence this period is also known as the Age of Pyramids. The second phase is a Middle Kingdom, 2000 to 1700 BCE. During this period, the Egyptian civilization made great advance in art, religion and science. So during the Middle Kingdom period, Egyptian civilization, Egyptians, they made great developments. Advance means developments in the field of art, religion and science. Around 1700 BCE, it was invaded by the Hyksos, a nomadic tribe from Western Asia, which ruled over Egypt for a century. So, the Middle Kingdom period, it lasted from 2000 to 1700 BCE, and in around 1700 BCE, there was this Hyksos. Hyksos which is a nomadic tribe from Western Asia. Nomadic means they are the tribes which keep wandering from place to place. They do not settle in a place. They do not settle in one place, but they keep traveling. They keep wandering from place to place in search of food for their animals. So such tribes, the nomadic tribe known as the Hyksos, which came from Western Asia. They invaded, they captured Egypt, and they ruled over Egypt for a century. Now the third phase is a new kingdom, which lasted from 1600 to 1100 BCE. So from 1700 to 1600, the Hyksos, the nomadic tribes who came from Western Asia, they ruled over Egypt. And in 1600, we have the New Kingdom period. This period saw the Egyptian power at its peak when they conquered Palestine and Syria. So this period, the New Kingdom period, it saw the Egyptian power at its peak. Peak means highest value or the highest point. So during this period, the Egyptian power was the Egyptians, they were very powerful. Their power was at its highest value, and it was during this time that they conquered Palestine and Syria. Ramesses II was the last powerful ruler of Egypt, after whose reign the Egyptian power began to decline. So Ramesses II, he was the last powerful ruler of Egypt, and after his rule, reign means rule. So after his reign, the Egyptian power began to decline. After the reign of Ramesses II, the Egyptian power began to fall. Decline means to fall. After the collapse of the New Kingdom, Egypt was invaded by the Babylonians, Assyrians, Persians, and finally in 332 BCE by Alexander the Great of Macedonia. So after the collapse means breakdown or fall. So after the fall of the New Kingdom, Egypt was invaded. Egypt was captured by the Babylonians, Assyrians, Persians, and finally in 332 BCE, Alexander the Great of Macedonia. And finally in 332 BCE, Alexander the Great, who came from Macedonia. Macedonia is a place in Greece. So Alexander the Great, who came from Macedonia, he invaded Egypt. He founded the city of Alexandria. So Alexander the Great was the one who founded the city of Alexandria. It's named after Alexander the Great. After the death of Alexander, one of his generals, Ptolemy, and his descendants ruled over Egypt. So after the death of Alexander the Great, one of his companion, whose name was Ptolemy, he and his descendants means his relatives or the later generation, the offsprings. So Ptolemy and his offsprings began to rule over Egypt. The last of Ptolemy's descendants was Egyptian queen Cleopatra VII, famous for her beauty and intelligence. So after the death of Alexander the Great, Ptolemy came to rule over Egypt, and the last descendant, the last offspring of the Ptolemaic Empire was Queen Cleopatra VII, and she was world famous for her beauty and intelligence. Queen Cleopatra, she was world famous for her beauty and intelligence, and she was the last Ptolemaic ruler, last Ptolemaic emperor. She was defeated by the Romans, after which Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire. So Queen Cleopatra, she was the last ruler of the Ptolemaic Empire, and she was defeated by the Romans, and it became Roman became a province of the Roman Empire. After Romans defeated, Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire. Province means a region. Egypt became a part of the Roman Empire. So this is all for today, girls. We learnt about the three phases of the history of Egypt. I want you all to read till here on page 23. Thank you, girls.